Here it is. I am more afraid to be single after 30 than I am to be in a relationship that isn't ideal. It's not me, but a lot of people. A lot of people deal with that. So that really is the point of this episode. What side of the fear are you allowing to run your life?
Your fears are tied to your deepest pain and your deepest traumas. And then those fears create desires in the opposite direction. And you can flip the script and write your own story if you can identify what's been running you.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1326. Are you living in the past, present, or future? Today, for episode number 1327, are you always going to be run by a fear? Alan and I were talking. As you know, I have to say this every week. It just is the way it is. We record all of our episodes on Monday, and we were talking about, hey, what do we think will be valuable episodes for the audience? What are we going through? What are our clients going through? What are people we know going through? What can we do to add value here? And we were talking about fear, and we were talking about how I get asked very often on other podcasts what my biggest fear is. And at this point, I am just conditioned to say failure. And Alan said, well, what does that actually mean? And I was like, I don't know, like rejection and I don't know, failure. Letting people down, disappointing people, failure. And we kept digging, and we kept digging, and we kept digging. And then we got to not being financially secure. I think that is my biggest fear more than anything, because to me, that is me not succeeding in business or not being able to provide for the family, whatever it may be. That's the biggest fear for me, is not being financially free, I would say. Not that I'm going to go buy a Lamborghini or anything right now, but I'm the most financially free I've ever been. And it's very interesting because that fear pretty much dictates what I do every single day. So maybe at one point I would have been run by the fear of rejection or the fear of failure, aka I'm not going to try this podcast episode because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. And if I fail, I'm not going to feel good about myself. And if I don't feel good about myself, I'm not going to be able to do it again. Eventually, that probably elevated to, I have a fear of forgetting what I'm going to say, right? I'm sure, I don't know if you had that. I definitely had that at some point in this journey. Like, I hope Alan doesn't kick it to me. I don't have anything to say. I have no idea what I'm going to say. Okay, that went away. Maybe the fear was, I don't want to look arrogant. I still have that. I don't want to look arrogant. Okay, that's something. But the interesting thing, and you can see by me kind of taking you through the story, there's always some sort of fear we're dealing with. And oftentimes it's fear that makes us do the things that we don't want to do, hopefully in a positive way. So now my fear of not having money is what helps facilitate me going on as many other shows and me working as much as I do or whatever it is. I think for a lot of us, one of our goals is to not have any fears or to outgrow our fears. I think a good reframe is, how do you rebuild, or even if we use the word reframe, how do you reframe your relationship with a fear? Can fear be a positive thing? I think so, as long as you harness it and it's not controlling you. So that's kind of our goal in this episode is, look, I am afraid of not being financially secure. That dictates a lot of the things I do and I don't do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad fear to have. It doesn't mean it's a negative fear, and it doesn't mean that fear is controlling me in a bad way.
I don't think it's possible to be fearless. I think that the human condition, the amygdala, the brain, is evolutionarily wired for fear. And I don't think you ever fully overcome it. And I'm not just saying that lightly. I've studied a lot of neuroscience. I've studied a lot of books about psychology. I've also done, and I talk about this often, not to impress anyone, but to build the credibility underneath what I'm saying so that you'll use it, so that it helps you. After 4,000 coaching sessions with people from all different cultures, all different backgrounds, all different countries, that's one of my favorite things about the fact that I've coached so many people, is that now I have enough data to where I can honestly say there is no one who doesn't have fear. There's no one I've ever met who doesn't have fear. let me give you some examples. I was on a Zoom session, coaching session with someone recently who her deepest pain from her past was a divorce. And I'll keep this anonymous, always. But the idea of going through another divorce is so painful, so unthinkable, so awful, so traumatic, that became her deepest fear. And unfortunately, that fear is keeping her small. It's keeping her trapped. It's running her life because she wants to express her truth to her husband. She wants to bring uncomfortable conversations to her husband. She wants to stand up to her husband and say, listen, these things need to change. This, and this needs to change. But she's so fearful that she's going to outgrow her husband and that her husband is going to leave that she doesn't. She suppresses it. And we've all been there in some capacity. And I'll just ask the listeners, have you ever been in a place where you were so afraid to lose the relationship, or so afraid of the lash out, or so afraid of being attacked, or so afraid of being villainized that you suppressed your truth? And if you're a human being, your answer is yes, unless you're extremely arrogant and or don't ever deal with this issue whatsoever, which I seriously doubt. And so just like this person, I had that same fear. And so I said this to her. I said, listen, unfortunately, that fear is keeping you small. And what's ironic is it's self-perpetuating because you're so fearful of the relationship ending that you're not bringing up your truth, which ultimately could lead to less feedback, less growth, and therefore the relationship ending. Whereas if you faced that fear, and here's how you do it. And for those of you on YouTube, I'm holding up this rock. So on my left hand, I have a green round rock. And I actually don't know what kind of rock it is, honestly. But anyways, this represents her current fear. Her current fear is the end of the relationship, deepest fear. I said, in order for you to overcome that fear, you actually have to transform it into a deeper, even bigger fear. And the deeper, even larger fear needs to be staying stuck for the rest of your life. Hardcore coaching call, I know. But the moment you transform the fear into a bigger fear, aka the fear of being stuck in a mediocre relationship for the rest of your life, needs to be bigger than your fear of expressing your truth. Now all of a sudden you're going to express your truth. And what's ironic and wild about this is that I bet you the relationship starts to become more extraordinary. And I've seen this 1,000 times. Maybe not 1,000, hundreds of times. And same goes for me, and I'll share this story briefly. I remember I was in a relationship, and I ended the relationship a couple different times. I think one other time prior to this, and then eventually I was like, you know what? I'm out. I got it. I'm done. I'm done. Driving home with two of our friends. This is a couple that we used to spend time with. And the female in this friend relationship, this other relationship, this couple is like, seriously, is it done? Like, you two are great together. Is it really done? And I was in the back of the truck, and I said, yeah, that's it. It's over. And she's like, why? Like, why? You guys are so good together. Blah, 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 which I disagreed with, but fair. I said, when it got to the point where it was no longer I can be with this person and achieve my dreams, when it became an or, I knew my answer. I was more fearful of not achieving my dreams than I was of losing that relationship. And that's why I ended that relationship. And here I am now, and I've now achieved something beyond my wildest dreams. Emilia, my relationship with Emilia, whether it's the Conscious Couples podcast or this podcast, this is genuinely significantly better than I ever thought was possible. And Kevin remembers the time in the studio, the basement studio, when I was like, I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible. And this is so far beyond what I genuinely believed was possible in an intimate relationship. Okay? But if I had my deepest fear stay what it was, which was being alone, which was losing that relationship, and I didn't transform it into, I need to be more afraid of not achieving my dreams. I need to be more afraid of not maximizing my potential. I need to be more afraid of being in an ordinary relationship when I know deep down that extraordinary is possible. Now, I didn't know this extraordinary was possible, but you understand my point. So if you're out there listening, maybe there's a fear that is running you. I think there is. There is a fear that's running you. And that's my question I've written down. What's your deepest fear? Mine was being alone. Kevin's was failure when it comes to money, which usually is connected to deep trauma and pain, by the way. But if you can replace that fear with the fear of not maximizing your potential, the fear of not achieving your dreams, the fear of staying stuck, the fear of not expressing your truth, the fear of being unfulfilled, if you can replace that deepest fear, it will change everything.
The fear of regret, too. I think that's a big one. Because it seems more accessible, I think, right? Like I've told you this many times. Most of us are not necessarily consumed with or focused on maximizing our potential. I know that's your thing and that's what drives you, but I know for many people it might not resonate. But regret might. I think of it, one of my biggest fears, and this is the interesting thing too, and it is, it's almost like you're always moving, you're just moving the ruler stick. I don't know why I use ruler stick, but you're moving that. The yardstick. Yeah, the ruler stick, the yardstick. You're moving that just further and further. So as an example, first time I ever gave a speech, I remember when I listened back, I was shaking so bad you could hear it in my voice. It was brutal. Now, would anybody else know? I don't know. Probably. I don't know how you could not know. I'm sure Alan did. But at the time, Taryn was there. First time Taryn had ever, it was my first time speaking. So that was my first time having her there. Matt was there. Matt's whole family was there. Yeah, Alan was there. There was my friend. I had friends there. It was a whole thing. And then there was a bunch of people I didn't know there. So that's scary too. Okay, we end up doing that. Awesome. Right? So then I've been on stage however many times now. Okay, cool. So I end up applying to speak at Podfest, whatever it was. I think it was in, I don't know, February, January. I don't know. And that was the first time I'd ever spoken on stage at a podcast event about podcasting. I was terrified. I told you without the kid. Yeah, without Alan, which in a way makes me feel better because I know your judgment, and not negatively, but your judgment's going to be greater than anybody else's judgment because you believe what I'm capable of more.
I think my standards for you are very high because I believe in you more.
Yeah. So yeah, I was trying to paint you in a positive light.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I can understand why that's anxiety riddling, though.
It's very anxiety riddling, yeah. 1,300, however many, you and I are still crushing it together. Crushing it being, depending on the episode and the amount of sleep we've gotten, but we're still doing it. We're definitely doing it. So I end up doing this presentation, this speech on stage. It's a panel, me and 4 other people. And I remember I looked at so this isn't a plug, we're not sponsored or any of that, but my Oura Ring, obviously it tracks your heart rate. And I was like, I wonder what my heart rate was on stage because I could literally feel it beating through my chest. And it was like 160 or something. It went very, very, very high.
Solid resting heart rate.
Yeah, not great. That was my first time giving a podcast speech. That was, you know how afraid I was? Like, I don't even know if I slept the night before. I was terrified. And there was only like 20 people there. It was nothing crazy. So then I get back from that and I have this like newfound belief of, I don't know, I feel like I knew more than a lot of people there. Like I need to speak again. I'm not going to an event unless I speak. So I apply to Podcast Movement, which is like one of the biggest podcast conferences in the world. And I haven't heard anything. So I'm like, oh, wow. I'm not going to get a chance to face that fear. Like I really felt good about that. I really felt good. I did a podcast interview the other day and the person that interviewed me, I met at Podfest. And he's like, oh no, I applied to speak too. I think they're like a month behind. So you'll probably hear back in the next couple of weeks. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. It's this interesting thing, I believe, where no matter where you are, there's always the next fear you're looking to check off. Mm-hmm. But something, I'm going to stop saying interesting so much. That's like my word. Something remarkable happens when you stop having fear because life kind of gets boring a little bit. There's something about stepping on stage where your heart's beating out of your chest, where you say to yourself, wow, this is what living is. Like, isn't this what it feels like to be alive? There's a lot of things that could go wrong here, but I'm like, you want to talk about being in the present, and you want to talk about having a conversation with yourself and going within yourself to figure out if you're capable of something. That's like the best thing in the world. Now, I also understand it's scary, but my point of all this is, if you are a human who is trying to accomplish something, there's most likely going to be a fear attached to what you're trying to accomplish. Can you use it in a constructive way? Can you take that fear and say, well, I'm more afraid of blank than I am blank. I'm more afraid of regret than starting the business. I'm more afraid of being in a potentially toxic relationship than being single. I think there's a lot of us out there we are more focused on having somebody sit across the table from us than we are the quality of the person sitting across the table from us. And I think that's just ingrained in a lot of us because, God forbid when you're 35 years old, you're single and people are asking you, oh, don't you have anybody? Are you going to get married soon? You're going to have kids? That. I've seen that so many times. I know a lot of people, when they crossed a certain age, everything got weird for them when it came to relationships. Because they said, here it is. I am more afraid to be single after 30 than I am to be in a relationship that isn't ideal. Not me, but a lot of people. A lot of people deal with that. So that really is the point of this episode. What side of the fear are you allowing to run your life? That's my question, with a long, dramatic pause. That long, dramatic pause was because I didn't know what in the hell I was going to say.
Well, it ended up being very good. I appreciate it. This is, every now and then we have episodes that are surprisingly, I don't want to say surprisingly valuable, because all our episodes I do.
You really painted yourself into a corner there, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, I know.
I did. Surprisingly more valuable than I thought they'd be, because I tend to be optimistic about our capabilities to add value. I think that's something we're good at. I think we're good at adding value. So this one is exceeding my expectations already because of the topic. If you think about it, and we've all heard that, we might have heard that saying. Have you ever heard, Kev, that saying, everything we want in life is somewhere between desire and fear?
Never like that, but I've heard something similar. Everything you want is on the other side of fear is one of the things I've heard.
Okay.
Hello, my name's Eddie Pinero. I'm the founder of Your World Within, and I wanted to take a second and just express how valuable working with Alan has been. His ability to help me create clarity and maintain focus on my big picture goals has been huge. He's been a huge asset with the roadmap as well. The day-to-day things, the little things that we sometimes overlook. I think anyone looking to, grow themselves, grow a business or both, would truly benefit from having Alan as an ally along the way. Again, great mind, but more importantly, solid dude.
What you desire most in life typically is the polar opposite of your deepest fear. So I'll give you an example. So simple example. Okay, so I'm going to be in the gym doing push day tonight. My desire is to be in extraordinary shape, to be big, strong, muscular, etc., etc., etc. My fear underneath that is being weak and frail and fragile and disrespected, like when I was a prepubescent boy. Everything is driving us, and I'll use this as an example. I have someone recently whose deepest fear was being unlovable. And in coaching, we get really deep into this stuff because all of us have these fears of not good enough, unlovable, failure. There's usually fears underneath that too. So for example, what does it mean about me if I'm not strong? Oh, that also means that I'm not going to get the respect of my stepdad, right? We come up with this stuff young in childhood. For you, Kev, not having money caused a lot of pain when you were growing up. So now money, right? So desire and fear. This one person that I'm referring to feels at the deepest level very unlovable. And so when she got into a relationship with someone who truly loves her, who truly is giving her the unconditional love she's always wanted, and unconditional, I say tongue-in-cheek a little bit, because obviously there's some conditions. But now all of a sudden she's not that motivated. You know why? because what was driving unconsciously most of your life was the desire to attract someone who will love you. And the reason why this person is in such great shape and such a hard worker and doing all these things was to eventually attract someone of incredible value. And now that she's done that, it's like, oh, you're going to need some different motivation now. And we all kind of go through this. And Kevin and I at 26, we talk about our quarter life crisis. We had our midlife crisis in our quarter life, which 26 years old, he had suicidal ideation. I had a car accident, and it really rattled our cages. I think what happened underneath that is our deepest fear shifted. For me, my deepest fear became regret. Instead of, I'm afraid not to fit in, so I'm going to go drink alcohol, I turned it into, I'm afraid to not achieve my dreams. I'm afraid to stay out of shape. I'm afraid to not maximize my potential. I'm afraid to squander my gifts. I'm afraid to squander my brain with alcohol. See how the difference is? One of them is I'm afraid not to fit in. I'm afraid to be alone. I'm afraid to lose my friends. Now all of a sudden my deepest fear is ruining my brain. Now I stop drinking. And so that's what happens when you have a midlife crisis. Your fear shifts, therefore your desires shift, therefore your whole life shifts. And Kev, you've been on enough podcasts now to where you hear these people's stories, and we interviewed so many people. That's what some of the traumatizing stuff did for them. The identity crises that we witnessed people say in the interviews. Kevin and I have interviewed hundreds of people at this stage. Those traumatic instances probably changed their deepest fears and therefore changed their deepest desires.
Yeah. I think one of the habits I used to practice was manifestation visualization. I'd watch a mansion tour or a car thing every day. It's like, that's the polar opposite of what my deepest fear is. Right. And this is the thing. I don't need $100 million house. Like, no, that's not the point. The point is I aspire to that level of freedom. I think part of it, this is the interesting thing too. I think a lot of this for me developed when I was like the gas station attendant, the guy at the hospital, like cleaning floors and bathrooms, like being looked down on.
Sign for us?
Oh yeah, I have a sign up on my wall here next to Taryn's picture of Jim Morrison. It says, "Don't ever forget the gas station and cleaning the hospital toilets. Keep going." But there was that the point of like just being looked down on by people. And I think I just always remembered, like, if I was more successful than you, you can't look down on me. You can't. Or here's the thing. If I'm more successful, whatever that means to you, in this situation, it probably means, I think it means holistically. I think at the time it meant financially. If I'm more financially successful than you do look down on me, it's not going to matter to me because I know you're wrong. I think there was probably a part of me that was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't feel that smart. I don't feel that capable. I'm insecure about a lot of things. Like, yeah, understandable. You'd look down on me. I think for me, it's like that. I think it just gives me the opportunity to prove little Kevin wrong in a way, younger Kevin. So that's directly, why do I work as hard as I do? Why did I learn, the time I learned the most about money and sales, probably sales, was when I had the least money. My car was broken. One of my credit cards got sent to collections. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to make any money. But that motivated me, and I was so afraid that was going to keep happening, or that Taryn was going to have to keep paying rent, that I traded that fear for something more constructive. It's almost like maybe this is kind of you trade your fear for the next, whatever the fear that'll get you through the next mile is. Like you're in mile 1, and whatever fear is going to get you to the end of mile 1. But when you get to the beginning of mile 2, there's another fear. And maybe it's a less serious fear. Maybe it's a more constructive fear. Maybe it's a less scary fear, a less traumatizing fear, whatever it is. Hopefully a more constructive one. But I don't think a life, and again, I don't know, it's kind of a bold statement. I don't know if a life free of fear is ever going to happen.
Of course not.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever going to happen. One of the things that I have really learned over the last 6 years is a lot of advice you're going to get sounds really good in fortune cookies, and it sounds really good in magazines and really good on Facebook Reels, Instagram Reels, TikTok, but it's not real. It's not real. It's being told to you by people who just are delusional, most likely. If you feel afraid, that's okay. If you feel scared, that's okay. If you feel insecure, that's okay. I don't know if those things are ever truly going to go away. Maybe they will. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But if you can use them more constructively, you're going to be better off. That's all I can say when it comes to those things. So, yeah, take that with whatever grain of salt you'd like.
The only way, I don't think it's possible to live without fear. I do think it's possible to transform your fear into a more constructive fear. And I'll give you an example. Kevin being fearful of being looked down on is, I think, a less constructive fear than Kevin being fearful that we don't double our revenue this year. See, one of them is a fear that's very aspirational. It's very future-oriented. It's very constructive. But it also has to do with how you deal with it. Because if Kevin's fear was so great that he went outside of integrity, now all of a sudden we doubled the business, but we did it in a way that wasn't integrous. And so these fears have to be constructed properly. What is a core value? Right? A core value for me, a core value of legacy. Okay, what's the fear underneath that? The fear is having a life that isn't meaningful, caused by pain. My dad's legacy was huge, and he impacted so many people's lives, and I witnessed decades of people talking about John. And so your fears are tied to your deepest pain and your deepest traumas, and then those fears create desires in the opposite direction. And you can flip the script and write your own story if you can identify what's been running you. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy and you're never going to live without fear. But what I can tell you is you can take back control of what those fears mean to you. You can take back control of what you do about those fears. If you're more afraid of public speaking than you are of not achieving your dreams, you're not going to public speak. You need to be more afraid of not achieving your dreams. And Kev, this will be a tangible example. You had to be more afraid of not being an international speaker than of getting on a plane. Mm. Either that or we got to take ships everywhere.
Well, I think part of it was being left behind. Like, look, at some point, I mean, I've talked a big game here about being a podcaster and helping people and trying to change the world. And at some point, you're going to have to do that stuff, right? It's like, oh, shoot. Okay, yeah, we have an opportunity to speak somewhere. It's like, all right. I think that's almost that's the hard thing is when you don't know how far your goals are going to take you, you're going to face a lot of fears that maybe you didn't expect to. So that's been interesting for me, for sure.
And even under that, you're more fearful of being a hypocrite in the listener's eyes.
Definitely.
or not leading by example. That's a fear I have.
Yeah.
I will never talk about something I'm not doing. I have a fear of not leading by example. Why? Because I have so much pain of people who gave me advice that weren't living by example. So this is powerful. Your fears are connected to pain and trauma, and you can flip the script when you understand that. And it is doable. It's not easy. I think that's a lot of what coaching and therapy is. It's changing the way you're wired. And there's neuroscience behind this too. Your brain is wired to fear certain things. And if you think about it, I'm running from a bear toward safety. Deepest fear behind me, bear, safety, desire. And all of us are doing that. And we're all achieving our way to the unachievable. I always say that. And understand what your aspirations are, but more importantly, understand what your fears are, because most likely your aspirations are probably, aka your goals, are probably the opposite of whatever your deepest fears are.
Last thing before we go. If that bear, and again, I don't know, I like analogies, I like examples, I like to picture it. If you're sitting at the edge of a 60-foot cliff and there's a river or a lake, let's just say there's a lake below you, a large body of water, and you can jump off that into the water. If you're just like strolling, okay, let's do this. I remember I went and visited friends in Vermont, and we were on the edge of Lake Champlain, and there were people jumping off. It was probably like 40, 50 feet. And I was like, nope, not interested. Not going to do that. I don't know what's in that water. Plus, it's not like a lake. Like for those who are maybe international or don't know about Lake Champlain, it's not a lake. It's a large body of water. No, pass. Hard pass. It's hundreds of feet deep. I think thousands of feet in certain. No, not going to do it. But because the fear of standing on land is not that high. I'm going to stay on this land. I'm good. There's no reason for me to jump. If there's a bear behind me, you better believe I'm taking that leap. I'll take my chances with Nessie or whatever the hell's in that water because I don't know. For me, that I can see that bear. The fear of staying on the land is greater than me taking that 60-foot leap into hopefully safe water. So
Nessie
I'll throw
for
that
the
out there.
international, or is Nessie global?
Nessie's global because Nessie is in Scotland, Loch Ness. But there
Loch
also
Ness.
is Champ of Lake Champlain. Did I say Lake Champlain? What lake did I say?
Champlain.
Yeah. So there's Champ, which is Lake Champlain's Nessie.
Got it.
So
Either way, whatever's under the water, man.
yeah, no,
You know
there's
what I mean?
there's fish, 10 feet long under the water. I mean, they exist. They don't eat people, but accidents
If
do
they
happen.
want to.
Yeah, accidents do
They
happen.
don't eat people, but they could change their mind
If they're
at
hungry
any
enough.
time.
Yeah. All right, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Next Level Nation, as you know, well, you don't know because this is months away, but our 11th round of group coaching starts on July 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be in summer. There's going to be a lot of celebrations. There's going to be a lot of you catching up with friends saying, hey, what's new? How are you? How's work? How's life? How's the relationship? All that. Go into summer with a positive, hopeful perspective on making progress. That is exactly what group coaching will do. And you get to hang out with Alan and I every other week for the summer. What could be better than that?
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
So everyone put themselves at 75 years old in their rocking chair. They're rocking back and forth, looking back on their life. And hopefully you can say you've done all you can with all you have. You're not going to regret the things you try and fail. You will regret the things you fail to try. If you are afraid of group coaching, I hope that you're more afraid to not maximize your potential. I hope you're more afraid to not do all you can with all that you have. Also, Kevin and I have been tracking habits for many, many years. I think I'm coming up on 8. Kev, I think, is coming up on 6 years of habit tracking.
I'll take it.
The value of habit tracking is unbelievably high. Kevin and I are so hooked on phonics, we would not go back. I don't think I could ever go back to not habit tracking, just winging it. If you want to start small on that next step of the staircase, we have an app called Optimal, and it's a simple way to start tracking your habits. If you need help, reach out. We have videos that help you with the onboarding. The link will be in the show notes to download the app, and we hope that you do.
Tomorrow for episode number 1328, how to start building self-trust. Trust, you are familiar with the word. You know what it means when it comes to somebody else, but what does it mean when it comes to you, and how do you build it? That is all we will be talking about tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Transform those fears. Next Level Nation.